Clothing shop employees of Reddit. What's the craziest demand somebody made of you? Story 1. I worked at a Levi's and a man came in to try on a plaid shirt that was displayed in the shop window. He said he had OCD and asked to try on every plaid shirt, probably 50 shirts we had in his size, because he needed the lines to match up at the seams. I was bored AF, so I decided to help him instead of focusing on other customers. The sale took about an hour and a half, but he bought 400 worth of clothing and then called our district manager to say how happy he was with me because other employees wouldn't take him seriously. Story 2. I was working customer service at a JCPenney's outlet store when we had a woman walk in wanting to return some items. When I asked for her receipt, she said she lost it, so I thought to try scanning the barcode to see if I could bring up the purchase in our system, and that's when I noticed the tags had the store logo on the back, for Hudson's. A store that had been gone since the 1990s. When I confronted the lady about the fact these clothes were bought from another store and had to have been bought at least 8 years prior, she said with a straight face, "Well, I obviously can't return them to Hudson's now, can I?" I was nearly floored by that encounter. Story 3. When I worked at Baby Gap, we didn't have the correct size onesie that a woman wanted to buy. She then demanded that I go into the back and have them make her one. I had to explain to her that the clothes are sewn in China and shipped to us from a distribution center. There are no seamstresses making baby onesies in the stockroom of your local Baby Gap. Story 4. I used to work at a little gothic clothing shop, corsets, dresses, t-shirts, etc. I once had a really huge guy come in, pretty overweight, and ask for a corset for himself, and he wanted to try it on. We did have a little changing room, but corsets are tricky to get into at the best of times, so he was definitely going to need some help. Not wanting to upset him or make him feel bad, I could tell it was quite a big deal for him to ask, so I had to try and help him into this thing. Long story short, but it was a battle, but in the end he was delighted. Thank God, because he was fairly sweaty and I didn't really want to put it back on the shelves. I rang up the sale and he paid. Next he wanted a bag. The owner was an idiot and didn't want to pay out for bags, but of course this poor man didn't want to walk all through the shopping center clutching a rather large corset, so I had to run next door to the pet shop to borrow a bin bag for the poor guy. I hope he was happy with it in the end. Edit for those asking, it was a gothic lacy corset. Can't quite remember color, but mainly black, and I think there were some red bits. He was definitely aware of his size. Both of us couldn't fit in the changing room, so I had to work around the curtain to help him. Yes, not having bags was terrible. The owner kept saying he'd get more but never did. He was hopeless and went out of business soon after. I was the only employee there each day, so didn't get any help, and was eventually told by my replacement when I came in to open the shop one day that I was fired. No reason, wasn't sorry when he went bankrupt. Asking for a bag was no big deal really. It was the 17-year-old me having to squeeze a middle-aged, very large sweaty guy into a sexy lace corset that was the trial. Yes, I could have refused, but I really needed the sale and he looked so nervous I didn't want to say no and ruin his day. Thanks for the gold, kind stranger. Story 5. She tried to return underwear and had a go at me when I told her that we don't for hygiene reasons. Made me call my manager and everything. There was a hair in it. It was also 50 cents. Story 6. I had a woman screaming at me that I needed to look in the back for another size of a shirt she wanted. She couldn't comprehend that she was in a thrift store. Story 7. Take the security tags and wire off a $499 North Face winter jacket and allow him to take it outside to try it in the sun so he could see if he really liked it. Story 8. Maybe not a demand because it was more of an expectation than anything else, but we did once have a lady come in and tell us that the parking lot was full, but angrily, she asked if there were any other parking lots. I feel like I need to add that this was in a sleepy town where it was quite obvious there was no other lot nearby. I said that the only thing I could suggest was trying to find a spot on the street. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind and said, well, obviously, genuinely confused as to what was expected of me. Bonus extra: in the same place an older guy came to the counter and asked if we had found any keys. Had lost some that day. I checked, no keys handed in. He seemed to accept this and wandered off. A few minutes later he's back with a younger guy. Asks the same thing. I say nope, no keys yet. The younger guy starts listing random facts. He's 86 years old. Right, okay, still we don't have his keys, so he's fought for his country. I had to check with him like, you don't think I have them and am just not handing them over, right? Nope, but hey, race some more facts anyway. His wife is very ill. Must have been something in the water back there, or a gas leak or something. Story 9. One time this lady came into the store and starts asking me for different sizes and everything. No problem, we have all the sizes in the back. I'll go get them. She's being a bit excessive, but whatever it means, I get to spend time digging around in the storage room. Eventually she comes across a sweater she wants to try on, and it just so happens that I'm wearing the same sweater at work that day. She asks for a small and I apologize because we're sold out. This lady then looks at me and goes, well, what size is the one you're wearing? You'll just take that one if it's a small. No, why would you want my dirty, sweaty, stretched out sweater anyways? I was honestly so baffled I just laughed awkwardly and walked away. Story 10. Had a customer demand a refund because the salesperson told her if she wanted a refund she had to bring the receipt, which would have been fine if she brought the product to return. Got mad because I refused to give her money for nothing. Got more mad when after screaming at me for 20 minutes she asked me to lunch and I said no. Story 11. I worked at a Nike outlet store for a little while, and primarily worked in the shoe department. We sold shoes ranging from boots to cleats, sandals to running shoes. We sold them all. This one older gentleman requested a sandal with a strap over the top. Sort of like Tevas. I told him that Nike didn't really have any sandals like that, especially at the outlet store. he proceeded to tell me that I'm wrong and that Nike definitely sold them because he got his current pair at Nike. I took a look at his current pair and lo and behold, they're Tevas, branded Tevas, so there's a 0 chance we sold them. After I explained this, he told me to check the stockroom, in which I basically told him no. It's a waste of time. He called a manager, requested that the manager show me where these sandals are in the back room because we had the sandals. My manager took me to the stockroom. We sat down for a minute and chatted about the guy and went back out and told him that we don't have the shoe anymore and he should try somewhere else. Story 12. Dress them. A fully grown woman wanted me to dress her because the customer is king. Because y'all keep asking. She was pretty but not hot. I am a heterosexual woman, so that didn't matter anyway. Story 13. I worked at a shoe store in high school. This one woman would come and buy her son a pair of sneakers from time to time. After a few months of the purchase, she would come in with the sneakers, try to exchange them for the next size up. Her son had very clearly worn the shoes every single day since she purchased them originally. One time, they even had a hole in them. She basically thought she could buy the shoes once, keep exchanging them when they got too worn or didn't fit him anymore. Every single time we would tell her we could not just exchange worn shoes for a new pair, she would act like she had no idea that this practice was not allowed, threatened to call corporate. We would ask her, if we tried to sell you these shoes, would you buy them? She would say no, they have been used. Story 14. I used to work at an outdoor store and someone once came in looking for a fully waterproof vest. I asked why he would want such a thing, and he told me I have a very expensive down vest and I need a waterproof vest to cover it so it doesn't get ruined. I tried repeatedly to explain that a rain jacket will do the same job, without getting his headneck soaked. He was insistent that he can only wear a waterproof vest, because what's the point of owning a $750 vest if you're covering it up with a jacket? We went back and forth for a good 5 minutes and he just couldn't grasp that the parts of him not covered by a vest would get wet. Story 15. So I used to be a manager at a department store. One day I'm called to customer service, and this larger lady immediately starts railing into me about how she asked for the store's buyer. The customer service girl mumbles about how she told the customer we don't have that. Lady continues railing into me about how she demands to speak to the person who buys for the store. This is a Kohl's. I was planning not to mention the name of the store, but I think it's relevant. This is not a Saks Fifth Avenue or some high-end. I keep explaining to this lady that the store does not have a buyer, and trying to ascertain her problem, but she doesn't want to speak to a manager, only the buyer. I finally am able to walk her through the process about how corporate sends us a truck every week with merchandise and we have zero control over what it's sent, and that it's primarily based on our demographics. She acts like that is the most ridiculous thing she has ever heard, but she finally agrees to talk to me about her problem. She tells me that the plus-size section is far too small. I again tell her that we have no control over that the amount allocated to each section is based on corporate data. I use the example of how our local demographic of women who shop here is primarily older women of average size US 6 to 18, and thus the Mrs. Classic section is fairly large. Of course, throughout all this I am apologizing for her unhappiness and trying to offer suggestions, like how the online store carries significantly more styles and plus sizes. She continues to just go off on me about how ridiculous it is that we carry so little in plus size. Actually, it was a rather large selection, but was half the size of Mrs. Classic, and how absurd it is that we don't have someone who hand selects our clothing that is carried in the store, and how unfair it is that we don't cater to plus-size people. The icing on the cake was when she huffed and declared that our plus-size fashions look like poor people in the 50s. Like, WTF does that even mean? Edit for clarification: the 1950s. Poor people in the 1950s. So the craziest demand someone ever made of me was to speak to a person who didn't exist, and to refuse to believe that that person didn't exist. Edit for clarification: obviously Kohl's has a buyer, on a corporate level, which I explained to this lady. She was upset that the local store did not have a buyer who picked out the clothes that we at that local store sold, why I explained to her how the merchandise was chosen by corporate and shipped to us each week, and we really didn't have any control about what exactly was carried in the store. I have a lot of stories from that place, like the 3 different women who insisted on showing me there in the middle of the store to ask about bra or blouse recommendations. The best one was this cute guy wheeling his grandma around in her wheelchair, bra shopping for her, and he was flirting with me. Then grandma lifted up her shirt to ask me about her, and he, mortified, wheeled her out of the store immediately. Kohl's also sells household items, and I have some stories from that side of the store too, but this question specifically asked about clothing. Edit: I just remembered another story. Once I got yelled at by a lady for turning off the lights while she was in the dressing room. I told her the lights are motion activated and that she must have been standing still for some time. She called me a liar and stormed off. Story 16. I work at an outlet mall, and I had a lady that hardly spoke any English yell and scream at me that it was a Texas state law that every store must stay open until sunset. It was a Sunday, so we closed at 7 p.m., but since it was summer the sun didn't set until 8:30 p.m. so she could use the fitting rooms. I replied, "Ma'am, the sun sets later but Gap closes now. The fitting rooms are closed. Please make your way to the cash register." She insisted I call my manager over, who not only hates rude customers, but hates rude customers who are mean to his employees. He basically says the same thing I did, but then tells her just to leave if she's not going to purchase anything. She ended up begging us to let her try on the clothes outside the store, in an open parking lot, so she could buy them. We said no. By far the weirdest request we've gotten from a customer. Story 17. I used to work at Vans a while back as a floor supervisor. I had this older guy come in shopping for his daughter. It was her birthday. We helped him out finding everything he wanted and it ended up being a good sale, but when it came to checking the guy out was a different story. I was listing off the things he picked out. Shoes, jacket, hat, that's when he stopped me. It's a cap, he said. I said okay, I don't want the cap unless you call it a CAP. I just looked at him blankly, took the hat off the screen and put it behind me. Best part is he asked to see the manager. When I told him that was me he said okay, let's agree to disagree, I want the cap. Story 18. I used to work in the body wear men's underwear and PJs department of a high-end department store. I'd have men trying to return clearly worn, sometimes stained boxers all the time. Customers were allowed to try on pants before they bought them, and I'd always tell them to try them on over the underwear they were already wearing, but most didn't. I had a couple of repeat customers who discreetly asked if I could grab some lingerie stockings from the women's department for them to try on. Never bothered me. It was a luxury store and I was genuinely happy to help these guys. Story 19. Find me this item in my daughter's size even though it's a sale item. Told her I couldn't find it. Got chewed out and got told if we have items on sale we should order more to meet demand. Tried to explain sale items are items that didn't do well, hence why they are on sale. She then told me a store shouldn't order clothes that don't do well. Well, that's news to me apparently. Story 20. Had a mom of a girl on the cusp of big kid versus junior sizes demand that I give her a pair of adult shoes at a kid price. She's only 11. I shouldn't have to pay full price to put shoes on her feet. When I refused, she tried to force her daughter to wear shoes that were way too small. The poor girl was in tears by the end of it. Newsflash: kids grow rapidly. It's your job as a parent to find a way to feed, house, and clothe your child. It's not the store's job to charge you based on age. Story 21. I do customer service for a clothing company. I had someone call cause she didn't get the online promotion that we had. It was clearly stated on the ad that if you don't enter the promo code, you don't get a discount. She threatened that she would stop buying from us. Welp, I didn't care. Story 22. Not me, but my sister. A dude asked her to check what size underwear he was currently wearing. She suggested he duck into the dressing room and look for himself. His response: damn it, ugh. Story 23. These are common. I'm 52 and people around 58 constantly ask me to get a size down because they can't reach. People ask what size their daughter, sister, mother, etc. is without having them there or even a picture. They then get annoyed that you don't know, using the fitting rooms as a toilet, and the curtains as toilet paper. Leaving dildos in the kids' fitting room. Story 24. There's a famous story about a guy who returned tires to Nordstrom's, which is a clothing store, but the employee gave them the refund. Apparently he had bought the tires at the store when it was an auto shop, before Nordstrom's bought it. Here's an article about it. Story 25. I was wearing the dress the customer wanted, in the size she wanted. She demanded to buy my dress, the one I was currently wearing, because she needed it for the weekend. Story 26. All the time I had people tell me they were just going to buy 20 to 25 items of clothing, then they were going to take it all home, try it on there, and they'd be back in a couple of days to return what didn't fit. There wasn't a darn thing I could do about it. One day my numbers would show this incredible sale, my boss would pat me on the back, and 2 days later I'd get this horrible return, my boss would frown. But once I explained, she'd frown again. When the items came back, invariably they'd all been shoved in bags and such, so they were all crumpled and wrinkled and would have to res-team and press everything. I know on occasion some of the items had been worn, but if the tags were still on and there weren't any obvious signs of damage, we had to take them back if they had a receipt. They always did. It totally messed with my commission sales numbers. I tell you what. Story 27. Someone asking for a discount when you work for one of the most expensive luxury retailers on the planet and being told that I'm spending a lot, so I should have a discount, which baffles me. Nobody is asking you to spend over 20k. You enter the shop knowing fully well what the brand and the prices are. So. Story 28. I wasn't an employee, but had a woman call me into the dressing room to undo her bra. I was with a female friend and I was just sitting in the hallway waiting for her. Woman pokes her head out and motions me to come to her. I just sat there assuming she was talking to someone else. She chirped excuse me and I just went into customer service mode and said yes. I think she put a bra on that was too tight and was starting to panic. She had huge titties and this bra had like 8 clips. I just undid them and dipped. Really weird and completely no, I don't trust people in clothing stores. I feel for the people that work there. Story 29. I worked at American Eagle for a thankfully brief period of time, and our managers were trying to combat falling store metrics and told us we were to start knocking on the dressing room doors to suggest other pieces of clothing that might go best with what they already had chosen to try on. I guess it was a moderately okay idea in theory, but in practice I was being told off for not knocking on a woman's store and recommending the new hip-hugging jean skirt that totally went with the tankini she just tried on. No thanks. Story 30. I worked at a small local menswear store in New York, and a woman came in and bought her brother that lived in Tucson a sweater for his birthday. A few months later, I get a phone call from some guy saying he'd like to return a sweater his sister gave him, but he doesn't want her to know, so can I please credit his credit card instead of hers so she won't find out. Unfortunately, the garment was also missing the tags and there was no receipt. I politely explained that the store policy was a 10-day exchange or store credit with the accompanying receipt, and unfortunately we were well past that threshold. There was no receipt, only the sticker on the paper gift wrapping telling the store's name, and on top of that, he didn't want the payment reverted to his sister's account. This dude starts screaming at me over the phone about my poor customer service and that he's a sheriff and demanding better service. He then abruptly hangs up and writes a scathing Yelp review about my obstinacy and lack of customer service. Of course I got in trouble and had a stern talking to about the incident, was made to be the scapegoat because I was following the written directions that were posted literally directly above my head every day in that shop. TLDR police officer screamed at me for not breaking the store policy for him. Edit Tucson, not Tuscan. Story 31. Work in a mix of 3 different seasonal in a tour city type shop, toys, camping, beachwear, etc. The beach shop is, we get people nearly every day when it's hot that have forgotten their bikinis or shorts and want to buy some fine they do. At the end of the day they return the suits wet and damaged. We get this broke while I was swimming in it. Everyone saw my breast. They throw a proper tantrum when we laugh and throw them out. How people think we're stupid enough to not know what they're up to is beyond me. They also try to return broken inflatables, wooden and metal oars, you name it. I've seen people trying to bring it back. I should add, in case there's any confusion, people are deliberately breaking things to return it at the end of the day. Story 32. Not a crazy demand, but I used to work for an audio-visual company back in New Zealand that did sales as well as hire and go out and set you operate events. Had a deaf guy come in and he wanted to check out lasers. Had to communicate with him via writing down notes. Turns out when you are in a dark room testing out lasers it's a bit hard to read and write notes. We did this for about 30 to 45 minutes, but seeing the smile on his face when he bought something he really liked made my week. Story 33. I worked in an outlet mall. Someone pissed in one of the bags we sold and left it in the dressing room. Since they just up and left a filled bag, I think they were demanding we clean it. I got paid like $8 an hour, so no thanks, I'm not doing that. Boss man took care of it for me. Story 34. I used to work at Bath & Body Works and an old lady who I suspect was partially deaf kept demanding we process a return for soap she purchased. Used bar soap, that she bought from Walmart. How did I know she bought it from Walmart? It had the clearance sticker on it, Dove. She had clearance Dove soap that she used, repackaged, and brought into my Bath & Body Works to return it. Oh boy. Story 35. She ran a mini marathon on blacktop in 20 paper flats, and disintegrated the soles, then wanted to exchange for better, more expensive shoes since the ones she bought were defective. Story 36. If you really like reading stories about how stupid humanity can be, our tales from retail or tales from call centers, our tales from your server, our tales from the front desk. Story 37. Worked at Guitar Center for some time. Had this old man tell me to turn down an amp as I was demonstrating it for another customer. Actually he took it upon himself to turn it down, made a bit of a scene through the aggressive motions. Not much craziness here, other than when he complained to my manager that I didn't treat him like a white. This was a white man. Racist, felt mighty entitled. Story 38. I was working at Nordstrom in a big West Coast city in the accessories department. It was towards closing time and a woman and a man walked into my department. I overheard her telling him to go look at the men's clothing while she looked at scarves. He agreed and walked away. She came up to me and pulled out a case of sunglasses and said, "Hi sweetie. I need your help. My boyfriend in Texas bought me these sunglasses and I need to return them." And I asked her for a receipt or a sticker to return the item. She said she never got one. I told her I would try to look it up by the credit card number and asked if the gentleman could come back to the department, and she yelled, "No, that man is my husband. My boyfriend in Texas bought me these. My husband can't find out." So I calmly asked her to call her boyfriend, who never picked up the phone. She threatened me some more until I hit the LP button on the keyboard and got it handled by the store manager. TLDR women threatened me to return her sunglasses from her boyfriend when she walked into my department with her husband. Story 39. I worked at a clothing store near the beach for a summer. Black Friday levels of busy almost every day. I'm on the register with a lady. I ring her up, fold all of her clothes and bag them up for her. She hands me her card. I swipe it, do the whole verification sign thing and hand it back to her. Tell her have a good day and that's that. So I thought. She came back furious and insisting that I took her card. I assured her that I gave it back once the transaction was done. But she wasn't hearing that. She handed me her bags and I unfolded and shook the out of everything she had bought. No card. She isn't being exactly quiet with her accusation, and people are now looking at me trying to convince this lady that I have no interest in taking her card. I start to get a little embarrassed, and she puts the cherry on top with demanding I check the trash for her missing card. So now I'm digging through trash in a store full of people, while this lady says to anyone that'll listen, "He never gave me back my card. I'm done with the trash." I grit my teeth and explain again that I don't have the card. She says nothing and gives me a death stare while I help other customers. The manager walks up and asks what's going on, so I explain it to him, with her still giving me the evil eye. A younger person, I think it was her daughter, asked her to double-check her wallet. At first she refused to, but gave in. Of course there's the card, no apology, no thank you, no nothing. She didn't seem the least bit ashamed. It was more like a, "You better not have taken my card" type of arrogance to her. With her head held high she walked out of the store. I went in the back to grab a slice of pizza, didn't go near the register the remainder of my shift. Story 40. I was just reading an article on this. A lady said some guy wouldn't stop ogling her and then asked her to try on some clothes for him because she was about the same size as his girlfriend. Another person told about a woman who returned a pile of old worn clothes to Nordstrom for cash refund. Finally, when the system couldn't register the barcode on her dead grandmother's jacket, she threw a hissy fit and wouldn't leave for hours. Story 41. Worked in a sports retailer. A guy came up to me and asked where can I find a parachute. I think he meant the resistance training parachute, but it was busy and he didn't elaborate, just kept asking me where could he find the parachutes that are in the rucksacks. He got visibly annoyed after the 5th time of asking. I laughed and suggested that he maybe check an airport. He stormed out, probably on his way to the airport. Story 42. A man came up to the counter with a pair of pants to return. Okay, no problem. Except he didn't have the receipt or the card he bought it on. Essentially he wanted me to find it in our records out of thin air. When I told him that I couldn't find it without proof of purchase, he started yelling about how he doesn't appreciate me giving him a hard time and was incredibly rude. Story 43. I work at an Apple retail store. Not clothing, but this story will serve the same purpose. This guy gives our store a call and requests to make a return since he was within his 14 days and he has his receipt. I tell him sure, bring it in, we can take care of it. The guy purchased a portable battery charger for his phone. The guy responds, well, I'm backpacking in North Carolina right now, so I can't make it back to your store before the 14 days are over. Just refund it over the phone. I tell the man no, I'm sorry, but you have to be in person to make a return. The man starts to argue with me and asks to speak to a manager. My manager tells him the same thing. The customer hangs up angry. The dude tried to return a portable battery after he used it for his backpacking trip. LMFAO. Story 44. Worked in a suit shop. My first day, some guy shouted at my 17-year-old self till I teared up because he wanted the formal wear, i.e., the entire shop, and I couldn't work out his request. He meant the higher wear, which was clearly labeled as upstairs. Story 45. I'm a barista and a supervisor at a very well-known coffee chain. I've had many odd requests. I've been asked to create a size larger than large. I said, well, how about I give you 2 medium drinks, and this woman went ape because she only wanted to have to hold 1 cup. Sorry, I can't make another cup for you. Had an old man come in and everywhere in the loose I'm talking up the walls on the mirror. ID only just started at my current store. I've worked in 3 stores of the same chain, so I was the one who had to clean that up. Once had a woman accuse me of purposely not giving her our lunchtime deal. We have a deal where you can purchase a drink, crisps and sandwich for like a $5 before 2 p.m. You guys, she came in at 5 p.m. screaming because I wouldn't allow her to have the lunch deal. Honey, if you're not at the till before 2 p.m., it doesn't go through. Sorry. She was with her elderly, disabled mother and then pulled the discrimination card. Yeah, I'm so not letting you have the lunch deal 3 hours late because of your disabled mom. I became a supervisor 5 months ago, so now whenever someone says I demand to talk to the manager, I have the unexplainable delight of saying you're speaking to her. Story 46. Once had a woman try to pay for things with Canadian money in the US and got mad at me for not accepting it as currency. Even said it was backed by the Canadian Central Bank. Moral of this story: Quebecois are. Story 47. I used to work a shop. A dad brought in his son and asked me, what size shirts do kids his size usually wear? I reached for the tag on the kid's shirt, read the number, and said 8. Never underestimate how stupid the general public is. I feel sorry for that kid. Story 48. The amount of times people try on clothing or talk about how great something would look on them and then try to tell us no tax. It's for a kid, like, I just saw you holding that shirt up to your boyfriend. Don't try to tell me your 7-year-old wears size XX tap-out shirts. Story 49. One time a lady tried to pay her store credit card bill for a card from a completely different store. When I explained to her that we are not that store and couldn't help her, she kept saying things like, but don't you guys use the same provider? It should be easy. What gets me is the store the card was from was literally right next door. I have no idea why she just didn't go there in the first place. Story 50. I briefly worked at a Red Wing Boots shoes after college. If you're unfamiliar with the brand, they're work boots. At the time, they were made in the US, were of pretty decent quality, and had a 1-year guarantee, so long as you brought your boots back within a year of purchase, would either have them replaced or repaired at no cost. I had a guy come in one day, wanting us to replace his boots. He was in our system as having purchased them from us, and had them for just shy of 2 years. I told him about our policy, and explained to him how 2 was more than 1, but he was dead set on not having to pay for another pair of 300 boots. He eventually left once I let him know that there was no one higher ranking than me in the shop at the moment that could give him the answer he wanted, and let him know when the manager was in next if he wanted to argue the case. Story 51. A woman waved me over from the other side of the shop to ask me to get a size from a stack of shirts because she didn't want to mess it up. I gladly asked what size she wanted and she replies, X small. The X small was the very first shirt on the top of the stack. There was a size sticker on the shirt looking right at her. I wanted to tell her that she should learn to use her eyes. Story 52. Guy came in 10 minutes before we closed. We made an announcement 5 till that we were closing in 10 after we shut off half the lights and locked the door. We can't do any closing duties until all the customers have been rung up. This guy is still just going aisle to aisle looking at clothing. One of us asked if he needed help and that we had to send the register information out soon. He said he was fine. Kept shopping. 30 minutes after we closed, our manager finally went up to him and told him we needed him to go the register. The guy got angry and told my manager to go away, he was shopping. Then when asked again, he threw a football as hard as he could at the manager. Short story version. Guy came in 10 till closing, stayed casually shopping until 30 minutes after we closed with half the lights off, and threw a football at our manager when he asked him to go to the register. Story 53. I used to work at an infamously trashy sports store in the UK. One day some guy came in with his wife and was trying on some jumpers. He was wearing a t-shirt which I assume used to be white but now rivaled a cubist painting of food and sweat stains. After trying on a red jumper for some time, he removed it and noticed that his top now had a thin layer of red fluff from the inside of the jumper stuck to his t-shirt. Not a huge problem for any normal person, because you can just wipe it off or deal with it. This gentleman, however, decided to throw one of the biggest tantrums I've ever seen. He claimed that we had ruined his top and that as he was on his way out to dinner after shopping here, we would have to supply him with a free replacement and wash his shirt for him. My manager eventually had enough and said, "We don't have a washing machine here, mate, and even if we did, it wouldn't get the food stains out. Now get out."